All right, guys, I'm just going to tell the musicians, you got a place to sit. Sit. Don't leave. Don't go far. You know, the singers, you can go find you a seat. Don't go far. Don't go wandering out in the parking lot or anything like that. Oh, Jesus. Ooh, you just don't know. You just don't know. Yeah, maybe you do. Years ago, because of where the Lord was setting us up in natural work, what we were doing with law enforcement, they said I needed to go to public speaking training. You say it didn't work, did it? Not so well. But part of that training was in a room with about, I guess, 45 or 50 people. They'd come by with a basket with little slips of paper in it, folded, and you reached in there and you got a piece of paper out, and when you opened it, it had a topic on it. And you had to give a 5-minute speech on whatever that topic was. I pulled my piece of paper out and it said, big toes. Yeah, you go wing it for 5 minutes about big toes. But it trained me so that you can be spontaneous. Well, the natural spontaneity that the world seems to enjoy has been stifled in the church. Yeah. We don't want to go there. We want it so pre-planned and so prefab that it goes together quickly. It's as painless as we can make it, and we're out of there. But what if God is changing something? See, I can't go into depth and detail. Right now, Libby and I are in a whirlwind. We've been petitioned to move to other cities because of what's going on. And we're trying to weigh all this out. We've got things coming from the left and the right, upside, downside. You would not believe, and I'm not going to try to detail those things this morning, but God is giving us a mandate to create a place of encounter. Now, believe me, I'm not going back to pastoring a church. That would have to come. You know the forest fire they just had down at Lake Lure? God would have to speak from that kind of burning bush to get me go back to pastor. I'm not looking to pastor, but he said to create a place of encounter. Now, what does encounter look like? Well, most people in the church really don't want that because flesh has to die in a place of encounter. Flesh can't stand in the essence and the presence of God. So when we're standing here and everybody's worshiping, the Lord starts dropping these slips of paper, and I'm thinking, God, please don't let it be big toe. He's dropping these slips of paper that I'm going to have to just kind of wing it this morning. Is that all right? You know, I've got stuff in my tablet here that I can go to, but I also had something here that popped up inside of me even as we're worshiping the Lord this morning. And I want to read to you from Matthew the 11th chapter, verse number 1. And it says this. Now it came to pass when Jesus finished commanding his 12 disciples that he departed there to teach and to preach in their cities. And when John had heard in prison about the works, say works of Christ, he sent 2 of his disciples. Now hold on just a second, because when he said he heard about the works, that means the toil, the labor, the purpose, and the manifestation of what Jesus was doing. Now just be honest with me, are you hearing much about what Jesus is doing right now? There's a lot of stuff being talked about, but not a lot about what Jesus is doing. But he said, I heard this while in prison. Now, why was this so unnerving to him? Because you see, John was we always talk about him being the New Testament prophet. He was the last Old Testament prophet. After 400 years of silence, basically, God suddenly raised up a man to come out of the wilderness, dressed like somebody they had never seen before and eating wild locusts and honey. And when he stepped on the scene, he had everybody's attention, but suddenly one greater than he stepped up. And when that transition started, suddenly he was no longer the center of attention. When God takes center place, when God steps up and said, look at me, it can be a hard transition for religious people to make. You got to understand, John was raised in the house of a priest. He knew religion. He knew form, he knew fashion. But suddenly here comes Jesus out of the middle of nowhere, and even though they're related, suddenly here he is, and John's having to decrease so that Jesus might increase. Are we ready to let him increase? So now he is in prison. He's not died yet. They've not cut off his head. But there is a good option or a good opportunity that he knows that's going to happen. He has fallen prey to a king that wanted him out, or actually a queen that wanted him out of the picture because he confronted their sin. Anytime we start confronting sin, the world system is not going to like it.
That's true. Amen.
That went over real big.
Amen.
But you see, here he is. He's now starting to doubt, is what is coming worth my laying down what I had? There's something new coming, but is it really God's plan that I have to lay down who I was and what I did and how I did it? Is it really worth that? And we have to ask ourselves the same question. Are we willing to let something similar to what's happening here at this house be able to envelop us to such a degree that we'll just kind of lay down what everything's behind us? Huh? My background's music, and I know musicians, when you work, you like to play. Now, I'm not saying they do, but, you like to get up there and just show your stuff. That mindset will not cut it in where God's taking us. It would have been perfectly all right if I didn't get the microphone this morning. You say, are you saying you weren't ready? I'm ready. I can big toe you all day long. Don't give me a microphone if you're not going to let me preach. But you see, some people get so enamored with what they do and what they say that's got to take center place. And God's saying, no, can't do that. But John's here now. He's got this thing going on in his head. He says, is this really what I've been looking for? And it goes on to say, and when John heard this in prison about the works of Christ, he sent two of his disciples and said to him, Jesus, are you the coming one, or do we look for another? Now, that's a hard question to ask. And Jesus answered and said to them, go and tell John the things which you hear and see. The blind see, and the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised up, and the poor have the gospel preached to them. And blessed is he who is not offended because of me. Now, wait a minute. He's giving him a blow-by-blow description of what the works of Christ should be. Did he not?
Yes.
He says, you've asked the question, now here's the answer. Are we willing to ask the hard question of God? God, what do you want for this generation? And him step up and say, I want you to do this. I want you healing the sick. I want the lepers cleansed. I want you to do all these things. He says, now this is the evidence of the transition. Are you guys ready for the evidence of the transition?
Yes.
Neil, are you ready to let God say, this is how it's going? Are you ready to say, God, here it is, just take it? And Jesus stepped up and said, now go back and show him or tell him what you have seen. There was a demonstration. Is the church of today ready for a demonstration? Let me take you somewhere. Matthew chapter 17. We've got some friends who just got back from Israel, and while they were there, they were sending pictures back on Facebook. And as I was looking at the pictures one morning that sent during the night, one of the pictures was at the Mount of Transfiguration. And it's this beautiful, long, grassy slope that rises up the top of the mountain. And I'm sitting there looking at that on the computer. I haven't had a shower yet. I haven't shaved. I haven't started my day. And I'm just sitting there minding my own business, having the last bit of a cup of coffee before I start the journey that we're on. And I'm about ready to close everything down. And the Lord says, are you ready for the transfiguration? You see, here we go. Look at this. Now, after 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John, his brother, and led them on a high mountain by themselves. Why those three? Peter was the bridge between Jew and Gentile. He was the one who had the revelation given to him, showing that Gentiles would be saved. He was that bridge. James, he was the first sacrifice of the apostles, the first one to die. He was the bridge between self and self-sacrifice. And John was the one who wrote Revelation. He was the bridge between what is and what's to come. He took those three, nobody else. The other one stayed behind. But he took them to a place, and listen to this, and he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as the light. And behold, Moses and Elijah appeared to them, talking with him. And Peter answered and said to Jesus, Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, let us make here 3 tabernacles, one for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah. While he was still speaking, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and suddenly, say suddenly, a voice came out of the cloud saying, this is my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased. And when the disciples heard it, they fell on their faces and were greatly afraid. Fell and were broken. And Jesus came and touched them and said, arise and do not be afraid. And when they lifted up their eyes, they saw no one but Jesus only. Now, wait a minute. Here are these 3 bridges. They've been taken to a place that the other guys are not getting to see. And Jesus suddenly shows them something that they had never encountered before. Are we ready for that kind of encounter? I mean, here they are, and suddenly there's such a light comes about him, and they start seeing the past. They see Elijah and they see Moses, two of the greatest Old Testament prophets and two of the greatest Old Testament leaders, and they see them walking with the new manifestation of God's kingdom promise. And he says, there they are together, and their religious mind kicked in and said, let's just stay here. Let's just worship right here. Build 3 tabernacles, one for Elijah, one for Moses, and we'll even build one for you, Jesus. And suddenly there came a sound from heaven wiping out the old. The voice from heaven did not mention Moses, did not mention Elijah. He says, listen, boys, that's my son. And when they opened their eyes, they saw nobody but Jesus. God is not, now listen, I know that Brother Worth was talking about Mike knowing the Old Testament. God's not doing away with the Old Testament, but he is doing away with an old mindset. I didn't even got Libby's attention. They ain't never preached this before. But you see, when this transition happens, they were taken to a place that they automatically wanted to squat and hang out. All right, this morning, some of you really liked what was going on here this morning. Some not so sure. Some said, I don't want that no more. But don't ever let what happens in a place become the place that you want to stay. Why? Because God is bigger than we've ever imagined him to be. Brother Worth brought up his name this morning. His name is wonderful. You know what that word literally means when you translate it out of the Hebrew? It means incomprehensible. You cannot imagine who God is. And so this house, now, can I just be real with you this morning? I almost said honest, but I always try to be honest. So I'll just be real with you. I don't know how many times I preached here. I ain't got a clue. I have never wrestled with what I'd preach. I was telling Libby on the way over here, she asked me, said, have you settled yet? And I said, I ain't got a clue.
Welcome to my world.
No thanks. I like to know. See, the Lord spoke to me some weeks ago and said, the year 2017 is going to be a year of increase. Woo. I wanted to preach on the increase. Yeah. And then also the Lord said, I mentor pastors, and I'm talking to a young pastor right now, and I'm talking to him about vision. So I said, I can preach on vision. Where there is no vision, where there is no revelation, people perish or cast off restraints. I can preach that. And then I've got what I'm going to share a little bit about here this morning. God wants meals prepared in this place. Now, don't get antsy. There's only 2 of them. Some of y'all scratch your head like, what is he talking about? And if I were to ask you your favorite meal, I don't have to go far to ask her favorite meal. It's Mexican. She loves Mexican. Made that decision. All right. If you ask me, I just like food. You know, if it can't outrun me, I like it. Just make sure it's dead and make sure it's cooked. Don't throw me none of that raw fish up here. I ain't that sushi stuff. That's fish bait. Some of y'all look at me like, I love sushi. That's your problem. You know, that name fits it. Sushi. I just don't eat it. I don't eat it. But anyway, what if God were to say, all you got to do is be able to fix 2 things? Now, my lovely wife, when we got married, could not cook a lick. Could not. Before we got married, she fed me spaghetti. It's pretty good. But I didn't know that's all she could do. Chef Boyardee for breakfast is not very, appealing. No, I'm just teasing. But we had not been married very long at all. She hates when I tell this story. But she wanted to make me biscuits. Now, what country boy don't like biscuits? Yeah. And so she made what's called a hoe cake. A great big biscuit, about the size of a Volkswagen hubcap. Yeah? Don't make them little bitty can things. That big thing. And she made me a biscuit. She set that on that little table in that trailer we lived in when we first got married. And there it sits. It's brown and steam's rising off of it. Man, I thought, God, you're doing good things in my wife. She said, you want some bread? And I said, yeah. I broke off the corner and it went, the inside run out on the plate and it went that thick. You could slide it in the crack of that door and never touch either side of it. The look on her face said everything. She says, I'll never fix them again. And picked it up and threw it in the trash can. I thought, I'm going to go through life without biscuits. But since then, you don't know what that lady can do. She fixes for 20 to 30 people every Saturday night. Throws out a feast. These people do without anything to eat about all day on Saturday so they can come and eat her stuff. They show up at the house and, man, they walk in the door going, they don't care what I'm going to preach and teach. They want to eat. She can cook. But when we learn what God wants to feed his flock. How do I know that? Glad you asked. 1 Kings chapter 19. Verse number 1, and Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done. Also how he had executed all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah saying, so let the gods do to me and more if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time. And when he saw that, he arose and ran for his life and went to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a broom tree. And he prayed that he might die and said, it is enough. Now, Lord, take my life, for I am no better than my father's. And then he lay and slept under a broom tree, and suddenly an angel touched him and said, arise and eat. Then he looked, and there by his head was a cake baked on coals in a jar of water. So he ate and drank and lay down again. And the angel of the Lord came back the second time and touched him and said, arise and eat, because the journey is too great for you. So he arose and ate and drank, and he went in the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights as far as Horeb, the mountain of God. Now let's look at this for just a moment. I'm not going to keep you all afternoon, but it will take a few moments. Is that all right? I'm not waiting for an answer. It does not matter what you say. Here we are. All right, here he is. Here is the man who has just slain 400 prophets of Baal. I mean, this is the guy that stops it from raining. This is a guy that can outrun the king's horses. And suddenly he receives a threat from a crazy woman. Men, do not look at your wife at this moment. And what does he do? He heads for tall timber. He was not running from anything but his own thoughts. She had not put a finger on him. She would never do anything to him, but there was a seed planted in his mind. In this hour, we have to be very careful what seed we let germinate inside of us. Yeah. I know since we were here a couple of months ago and preached the last time, you say, how do you know? Because I preached here on my birthday back in October. And Santa Claus and Kristen renewed their vows. Had to get that in somewhere. I see Facebook too. But you see, here he is, and when he heard this threat, a thought was sparked inside of him. And here is the man who has God's blessing on his life. He says, I got to get out of here. We have heard all kinds of seed being cast since we were here in October. We have heard. I never got so sick and tired of political commercials in my life. And I thought after the election they're done. No, they're not. They're still throwing seed. But I am the tender of my garden. I choose what seed goes into my life. You have to choose what's sown in your spirit. Now, if you let this world system, it will cast fear, doubt, unbelief, aggravation, agitation, anger inside of you to such a degree, you're not fit for anything else but to let that germinate and try to pull the weeds out of that junk. You have to determine what seed you let be sown in you. Elijah, the prophet of God, I'm not belittling or demeaning him because he was a mighty man of God, but he let a seed go into his mind and it caused him to run away, and he had the attitude, God, kill me. Yep. Please don't think I am belittling the rapture of the church. But what we see going on around us right now will make some of us turn and say, all I want to do is go home. Jesus is coming, but he's not coming for the church I see right now. Because the church I see right now is not without spot, wrinkle, or blemish. God is still at work. Now, you're saying he's not coming. I'm not saying I do not know when he's coming, but I'm just saying I do not see prophetically how the church is prepared for that event to take place. Now, it could happen quickly, and we could be done and out of here by next week. If I am, when we get to heaven, just tell me I'm wrong. It's okay. I've been wrong before, at least once, right, Libby? She'll jump up and preach on that one. But he lets something as small as a threat take and dictate where he was, and he finds himself in this wilderness place, and he's saying, God, just let me die. I'm the only one left. Now, wait a minute. As he's there by himself, let me tell you right now, isolation can cut you in two ways. It can cut the world out of you so you can hear God, or it can cut God out of you so you hear the world. Be careful about isolation. Make sure it's a God-ordained season of isolation. Libby will tell you I'm a very private person. I like my solitude. I like being alone. But I know there's times I need people around me. I have a ministry partner that Libby and I spent the day with Friday, just riding around, eating together, and spending time just talking about what God's saying and doing. Because like I say, we're kind of this whirlwind thing right now, and we got so many things coming at us, we got to have discernment. But anyway, I am very careful about being alone too much. But there's times I just need to get away and say, God, what are you saying? Yeah. But here he is, he's there, and he says, God, I'm done. Just check out. But in verse number 5, it says, when he laid under this broom tree, suddenly an angel said to him, arise and eat. Notice he said arise, which means to get up on your feet. Isn't it about time the church arises? He said, arise and eat. He had prepared a meal. The prophet gets up and he eats, and then he lays back down, and there he rests for a while, and suddenly another arise and eat. And another meal has been prepared. What are those two meals? First meal, what did he need more than anything else? He needed restoration. He was tired. He was exhausted. He was worn out. He had given all. He had run. He was just flat tired. Have you ever been tired? Yes. Don't say amen too loud, but have you ever been tired of being a husband, a wife, a mama, a daddy, a deacon, a preacher, a living... Shh, you said that out loud. They don't know that preachers have feelings. We're always up on the high. No. He had to have something restored in him. When you get so weary and so tired, there have been times I have just sat down after a Sunday morning service and said, I quit. I had an administrator that worked faithfully with us for the whole time that I pastored, and I'd walk into her office sometimes on Monday morning, and I'd sit down in the chair across her desk from her, and I'd say, I'm done. You know, where do I sign? Get my name off everything. I quit. And she'd just smile. Wilma Jean, I called her. Wilma Jean would just smile and say, you're not going anywhere. And I'd say, watch me. And a couple hours later, I'd come back and say, okay, I'll stay. You talked me into it. She hadn't said a word. She hadn't said a word. I bet you in the over 20 years that I've pastored, I resigned at least 5,000 times. That's what I did. I didn't want to quit. See, when you begin to understand this weirdness, you will learn to feed the people. Get this now. Let me just speak a little prophetically here. I'm not a prophet, but listen. There'll be people coming through that door who needs restoration. Yeah. Amen. Huh? They need to be restored. Why? They've just flat got worn out. Now, I'm going to dig into restoration. I can't get into the next meal today. I don't have time. But the second meal that then came when the angel knocked the second time, what was it? First one, restoration. The second meal was releasing. Because he went in 40 days in the strength of that one meal. He was empowered to do. Now, you say, what was he doing? His whole life has just changed. He's no longer the prophet that he was. Because if you read on beyond where I just read to you, God gives him declaration. He says, you're going to raise up another prophet in your place. His name's Elisha. And then you're going to anoint kings to do the work of the kingdom. That tells me two things. God's going to work through the religious structure of the prophet. He's also going to work through the business structure of the king. But he had to embrace something here. I'm not who I was. Can I handle, after I've been restored, the releasing that comes with that, where I now go in a different function and a different office. The hardest thing I've ever done in ministry was to tell the church at Candler that I was leaving without knowing exactly where I was going. But I felt the sense of release, and it's been 8 years now, a little over 8 years, that this process has been in action, and suddenly I'm starting to see clearer and clearer and clearer exactly where we're going and what we're supposed to do. When God feeds you these 2 meals, now I'm not saying that every service is going to be a restoration and releasing, but I think that there'll be people in every service who need restoration, and the word given is going to restore them, or those who need to understand where they're going. The releasing aspect of the meal, they're going to receive that aspect of it, and you'll say, well, how can they get that from the same word? Because God knows where you're at, and He knows how to speak into your spirit.
Amen.
Huh? And when we begin to understand not only the restoration, but also the releasing. Now, I want to focus on restoration this morning because I really feel, and I sincerely say this, I feel that this house here is going to be a place where people come first to be restored. Amen. And some of you who are here now are about to be released into the next step. I'm not talking about leaving this structure. I'm not talking about leaving this house or this fellowship, but I'm talking about a new level of intimacy with God. That's been proclaimed this morning through everybody who's got up here, and you're going to see this releasing take place. But I need to spend just a few moments, and I use that word few loosely, but I need to share just a little bit about you or with you about this releasing aspect or this restoration aspect. Listen to me what it says in Psalms 23. You say, well, I know Psalms 23 and quote it. Well, let me preach it for a moment. Verse number 1, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. Does that not sound kind of tranquil? Right? Verse number 3, He restores my soul. He leads me in the path of righteousness for His name's sake. Wait a minute. The word restore here simply means to bring back. That's all it means. But bring back what? My soul. See, our religious mind think of the soul, that's what got saved. No. The word soul here means the self, the person, the desire, the appetite, the emotion, and the passion. God says, I bring that back to you. There'll be people, even here this morning, but people who will walk through that door who need to understand who they are, who God created them to be. They need to have a desire for the things of God restored to them, the appetite of the Spirit. They need to have their emotions restored, and they need their passion restored. And there are people who will walk through these doors, and maybe you're here this morning that you are just a spiritually passionless person. I mean, you come to church, but there's no passion. Nothing that draws you, nothing that births inside of you, nothing that burns. Some of you guys up here on the stage, and the ladies that was up here earlier, there's something that is revealed through passion, not just in showmanship, because if all we're doing is putting on a show, then all you are spectators, and you're not participators. God is looking for some people who are willing to let Him restore their passion. If you talk to somebody any length of time at all, they'll reveal their passion. What makes them click? I got a little brother who's living with me right now because of some issues he's going through. He's living with me. All he thinks about is his Harley-Davidson motorcycle. It's on his hat. It's on his shirts. It's parked in my driveway sometimes. I sold mine, so I can't, I got to be careful not to be envious. I have an older brother. His passion is Marine Corps. Hoorah! I looked at people who come out. Now, if you come out of the Marine Corps, all I can say is God bless your heart. But it took over his life. He was only in there 4 years. But everywhere he goes, he takes vacation and goes back to boot camp. Paris Island for the graduation. He don't know nobody's graduating. He just liked to watch. My older brother's about this tall. But don't mess with him. Why? He's Marine. He goes to Washington, D.C., the memorial wall up there. Like I would go to Carowinds. Why? That's his passion. Do you have a passion? If not, God needs to restore His passion inside of you. When you get a house full of passionate people, it can get crazy. I was telling you, Pastor, the other day, crazy people go to church. They say they're in a mental hospital. No, they at church. Not here. But I run into them. See, if passion is returned, yeah, it can get a little messy. That woman right there, she's passionate about God, but she's also passionate about a clean house. Good Lord, that woman can clean. If they ever made a commercial of a Tasmanian devil who was a housekeeper, she goes to a house and it's just, when we used to keep big old dogs, she would get out her cleaning stuff, they'd go hide. Because if they don't get out of the way, she's going to dust them. Huh? They're going to come out with a polished sheen on them. She's passionate about that. Let me ask you, now I'm not asking you to give me an answer this morning, but what are you passionate about? It's easy to get passionate about an old car that you've restored, or a motorcycle, or a bass boat, or a deer stand. Have I hit home anywhere? Kristen, don't poke him in the ribs. You don't mess with Santa Claus or Santa Claus. See, when you get to a place that this restoration restores your passion, things can move on. I got to go on. He says he restores that, my emotions, my desire, my passion. Listen to this. Psalms 51:12 says, restore to me the joy of your salvation. Now, he didn't say my salvation. God, your salvation. The word, he says, bring back my joy. That word simply means exaltation, to be jubilant and rejoicing. My God, what happens when a church has people in it who have been restored with the joy of his salvation, which means deliverance, rescue, safety, welfare, and let me throw this last one in here, prosperity. Huh? When we have had that restored to our lives, we suddenly find ourselves sitting down now listen, he prepares a table for me where? In the presence of my enemies. You don't have to eat your restoration when everything's perfect. You can sit across from the table from the biggest enemy you have and still be restored. Amen. Your position does not have to change in order to be restored. God, if you'd give me a new job, I'd be happy. God, if you'd give me a new neighbor, I'd be happy. Some of you, if I had a new husband or wife, I'd be happy. No. Even in the presence of your enemy, God says, I'll restore the joy, the jubilation of my deliverance, my hope, my purpose, my peace, my prosperity. I'll restore that to you. Amen. Can we dare believe, God, that in this transitional time where he's taking us to this upper level, those three people that we talked about earlier, can we say, God, give me back the understanding of what you've done for me? See, if you're not careful, you focus on what's happening around you right now and forget about what has already happened. See, your situation can rob you of the realization of your deliverance. Huh? Of your rescue, of your safety, of your welfare, and of your prosperity. Well, Brother Chuck, I ain't got two nickels to run together. I am still prosperous. Yeah. It may not have come to my house yet, but I'm still prosperous. Amen. Why? Because the Word tells me I am. Yes. You say, how much money do you need to fulfill your desire? 5-year plan, $825 million. Y'all think I'm joking? No. I need close to $1 billion to do what God's called us to do. That's for the first 5 years. You say, what is it? Can't tell you. But it's coming. Look at your neighbor and say, it's coming. Amen. You say, well, Brother Chuck, I don't know if I want you to have it or not. It's not for Chuck and Libby. It's for the kingdom. Yeah, that's what it's all about. All right? I get stuck there. Jeremiah 30:17 says this. Verse number 17, for I will restore health to you and heal your wounds, says the Lord, because you have been called an outcast, saying, this is Zion, and no one seeks her. Now, wait a minute. Are you telling me you're going to have sick people come through those doors that need to be restored physically and spiritually? Listen to what this means. When he says, I will restore health and heal your wounds, you know what that means? What it really translates out in the Hebrew? It translates out to the new flesh that grows on a wound or the scar. What does that mean? All right. 1970, graduated high school, 17 years old. A few months later, I turned 18. Back then, Vietnam was in full swing, and they were bringing body bags out by the plane load. And they were drafting every day. Here I am, 18 years old, lost as a goose in a hailstorm, and I had to go to the draft board and sign up. I go into that place, they start filling out the paperwork, and they said, okay, we need an identifying mark. Now, what they were telling me, when you get blowed up, we got to find out what piece fits where. So I had to come up with a permanent mark on my body that they could look at and say, that's Charles Waldrup. Serial number, whatever. And so I said, I got one. I have a U-shaped scar in the heel of my right hand. 7 years old, running, doing what I shouldn't have done, fell. I dug it out, and there was this big gash right here. For the rest of my life, I carry a U-shaped scar. If you could see my draft card, it is on that draft card, U-shaped scar, heel of right hand. That scar identified me to them. Now, what's that mean? All right, people come through that door, they're going to look at you and say, oh, they got their act together. But every one of you have a scar.
That's right. Yes, Lord.
See, everybody comes with some baggage. Some's got a little overnight case, and some you hear the beep, beep, beep of two men in a truck backing in because they're going to unload a load. Huh? Am I real?
Yeah.
Everybody's got something. Some just got it in a big truck. But you see, when they come in and they say, you don't know where I've been, show them the scar. Because I was where you were. And look, I'm healed. And not only that, but they can see their wound as having already been healed by faith through Jesus, because by his stripes we are healed. That's not just when you're praying for sick people. He says, when I will restore, I love that word, health to you and heal your wounds, I will cause a scar to come. Now, could God in his awesome majesty have made it so there was no scar? But do you remember just a moment, the only thing that Jesus kept from the crucifixion? The scars in his hands and his feet. It was a reminder that I have been through something, and I came in on the other side. Don't be ashamed of your scars this morning. Now, if you're still walking around with a wound, you need to be restored. But if you have been scarred, that shows you were wounded. But I lived through it. My God, we used to show horses, and we used to buy and sell horses some. And my son, he loved horses, and he's about 15 years old. And he says, Dad, I found a horse I need to go look at. And so we go out all out in Hendersonville, and there is this half Arab. We showed Arabs. There's a half Arab paint horse, which means the spotted horses. Hard to find. And so they come leading this horse out of the barn. He's close to 16 hands high, and there he is. He is just rippling muscle. He is a beautiful color. He's got that, what we call a toppy head with the dish in it. And he is one gorgeous animal. And they've got a halter on him, and they got a lead line. And I walk up to the horse, and all I did was went like this to pet the horse, and it jerked away. It's called head shy. That tells me it's been beat. And that horse will kill you. I said, thank you very much. We got in the car and went home. Why? You will get hurt until you heal them of the being head shy. There are head shy people walking through those doors in the coming day. There may be some head shy people this morning because you had the snot slapped out of you. Forgive my choice of words. But I mean, it's one of them slobber knockers. That you have been hit so hard, so many times, that anytime somebody tries to get close to you, you flinch. They're hard people to pastor. Why? Every time you come up to them, because they expect you to hurt them like they've been hurt. You've got to let that wound heal so they can show the scar to the next emotionally abused person that comes through that door and feel like there's hope for me in this restoration process. Now listen, but he says, I'll do this. He says, because you were called an outcast. Wait a minute. That word outcast in the Hebrew means a neglected and banished one. Some of you may feel this morning, you've been neglected. Not only in the natural, but God's neglected you. Well, look what they get to do. Pastor Mike gives them the microphone. He lets them on stage. You don't ever ask me to do nothing. And you got that little head wag going on. One of the hardest messages I ever preached, it almost cost me one of the greatest workers I ever had. The first time she showed up at church, I preached a sermon called Get Over It. Just get over it. And she'd come out of an abusive situation and not a good marriage, or married to an alcoholic, and they were now divorced, and she was just beaten and battered. And the first thing she hears from what would become her pastor was, just get over it. Sometimes you just got to get over stuff. Huh? Let the wound heal. Quit picking at it. Have you ever had a kid pick at a sore? Every time they get a little scab on it, they'll pick it off. And they come, Mommy, I'm bleeding. Don't you think sometimes the pastor or even God himself gets tired of people coming, look, I'm bleeding again. Let it heal. Get over it and go on. Now, I know that sounds rude, but I'm not your pastor. I'm leaving after here, and you don't have to worry about me for a while. You can have a secret ballot after I leave and tell him never invite him back. It's okay. We got other places to preach to. We'll miss you, but bye. No, I'm just messing with you. Are you willing to get over people not accepting you for who you feel like God's made you to be? You've been neglected, and in some cases, you've even been banished. Lee and I were banished for a while from my family. I probably told you before, I was raised a heathen. We didn't go to church. I'd run with drug dealers. I carried a gun when it wasn't cool. I did. I mean, I was 17, 18-year-old. I carried a gun. Why? I hung around bad people. One of my best friends went to prison for murder. Was he guilty? Absolutely. When you shoot a highway patrolman with a shotgun, you're guilty. That's the people I run with. And when I got saved all the way. I married a PK, a preacher's kid. And my family, they loved her. I laughed about it. The night we decided to tell our parents we was getting married, went to her house. Her daddy hadn't got home. He was pastor. He hadn't got home yet on Saturday night. Told her mama, said, Miss Randolph, we're going to get married. She said, oh, no. Oh, no. I thought, that made me feel real good. Her daddy gets home. I said, Mr. Randolph, we've decided to get married. Well, son, do you think you can afford to feed her? Go to my house. You know, they love it on us. Well, congratulations. Go to my house. Mom and Daddy done ready for bed. I said, we're sitting there in the living room. I said, Mama and Daddy, we're going to get married. My mom goes, my daddy says, son, this is how it is. You ever hurt that woman, I'll shoot you. And he didn't mean shoot me in the foot. He going to shoot me between the eyes. He didn't care. And when we got born again, they would laugh at us. We couldn't talk about church. My daddy would go out of the house stomping mad. Go out and sit it might be 20 below zero outside. He's going to sit in the front yard till we leave. My older brother, the Marine, he won't even talk to us hardly. Won't come to our house. We were banished. There's sometimes you just need to be restored from that because serving God is not a cakewalk. And some of you may feel like you've been banished, you're the neglected one, but there are people coming through these doors. Listen, guys, you're going to set an atmosphere up here on this stage. I know it's going to be different. I know it's going to be unique, but you're setting an atmosphere where people can lay that junk down and they don't have to pick it up when they leave. Well, Brother Chuck, I just don't know if I can handle that kind of worship. Here's my word to you. Get over it. I'm trying to finish. He says, now, you say, Brother Chuck, I've been through a tough time. Let me finish with this one. Joel chapter 2, verse number 25. So I will restore to you. I'll bring back the years. My God. The years. Get this, that the swarming locust has eaten, the crawling locust, the consuming locust, the chewing locust. Why does he give a genealogy of all the different kinds of locusts? Because they all don't come at the same time, and they don't always eat the same way. It comes in waves. Here comes a swarm. Whew, I survived that one. I still got a little crop left. Then you see the cloud on the horizon. Here comes another swarm. You just got through with the crawling locust. Now here comes a consuming locust, and here comes a chewing locust. He says, my great army I sent among you. Now he says, I'm going to give you what they took back. I meet angry people who feel so angry at people and at God because of what has happened and they lost in the past. I'm being very careful right now because I feel the prophetic coming up in me, but listen. That's why I want these guys to stay up here. We're going to do something in a minute, I think. He says, I'm going to bring that back to you. What's taken years for you to lose. And he says, you shall eat in plenty and be satisfied. Let me ask you a question. How long has it been since you've been satisfied with anything? I'm just asking the question. You have to answer it. You shall eat in plenty and be satisfied. Here it goes. When people are restored of what they've lost, and praise the name of the Lord your God, who has dealt wondrously with you. Get this. And my people shall never be put to shame. Then you shall know that I am in the midst of Israel. I am the Lord your God. There is no other. My people shall never be put to shame. When God begins this restoration process of what you have lost, suddenly praise erupts.
Yes. Thank you, Lord.
He said, why do you praise me? Because he says, when you praise me, you're telling me this is who you see me as. He says, I am the one that is causing you to eat in plenty and be satisfied. I have dealt wondrously with you. You shall never be put to shame. I'll be in your midst. There's none like me, and you will never be put to shame again. I'll stop the process. See, some of us have been raised and we have been told, well, that's how your family's always been. Have you ever felt you just don't fit anywhere? Y'all don't know my family. I talk about my family a lot because they ain't here. By the time I was 12 years old, I was the tallest one in my house. I felt like I was raised with a bunch of hobbits. Little bitty people. I mean, my mama was just about this tall. I got a sister shorter than her. I got a brother who is the Marine. He's a little bitty fella. I got a younger brother, one's living with me. He's about that much shorter than me. Every family picture, there I am. This big old head. As I'm losing my hair, it looks like a lighthouse. You know. I didn't feel like I belonged to that family. They were skinny people. I've been called a lot of things. Skinny ain't one of them. And here we are. I don't feel like I fit anywhere. Libby will tell you this. We were an angry family. You go around. She's one of 5 sisters. If you've got a problem with being hugged and kissed, don't go to that house. They don't want to hug and kiss on you. I'm going to hit them. You know, I'm 6 months out of my heathenhood, and I go to their house, and they all want to hug and kiss. I think, don't do that. Give me some room to breathe. She comes to my house. We go to my house. Actually, that's the first time after we told me to get married. And we went there to eat. We left, and Libby's driving up the road, and I'm in my 66 GTO, and I'm shifting gears, and everything good and cool. And she says, y'all even like each other? I said, no. Not really. You know. We fought. And I didn't feel like I fit anywhere. But God says, I'll restore that. When my daddy died in 1999, we were at church one Sunday, and this is a man who could, I really think he wrote the dictionary on cuss words. He'd just make them up as he went. Cussed something fierce. Just, he wouldn't cuss around her when we first got married, but that changed. But he was just that way. Well, he got saved. Can I have another minute or two? My daddy, I wasn't pastoring then. I was getting ready to go preach at a church out in Hendersonville. And it's early in the morning. We just got up. I'm starting to get ready. Phone rings. It's my mama. We lived about 3 miles from her. I said, can you get over here? I said, something's happened to your daddy. Well, Daddy, I didn't know this. He'd been to the doctor. He'd been diagnosed with terminal cirrhosis of the liver, though he wasn't a drinker. Never. He hardly ever drank. And they only know how long he'd been an alcoholic. He said, I'm not one. He said, well, your liver's about the size of a walnut. And he says, shriveled up like a prune. Mr. Waldrup, there's nothing we can do. You're going to die. And I walk into his house. He's sitting in the recliner in the living room crying, just sobbing. I said, Daddy, what is wrong? He looked at me and said, Son, I'm going to die, and it scares me. I said, well, Daddy, we can fix that. I led him to the Lord right there in the living room. He said, where are you going to church? I said, well, I'm preaching in Hendersonville. He said, can I go with you? I said, get ready, and I'll come back and get you. He got Mama up. He got my little brother and sister. They still lived at home then. He got them up, and we all got my old Cadillac, and we went to Hendersonville for him to hear me preach for the first time. That's on Sunday. On Monday, my mama calls Libby. I'm already going to work. My mama calls Libby and is crying. I said, God, what's happened now? When Libby answered the phone, she's crying, sobbing in the phone. It's real, it's real, it's real, it's real. Libby said, what's real, Mama? Said, I know what happened to Jake is real because he came into my bedroom before he went to work this morning and kissed me and told me he loved me. He had never done that in our entire marriage. Tuesday, I come home, my daddy's truck's sitting in the driveway. I go in, he's sitting at my dining room table and said, Daddy, what's up? And he's crying. I thought, God, what's happened again? He said, Son, I just got back from the doctor. I said, and? They said, I've got the liver of a baby. They said, it's clean. There's not a sign of disease in it. Don't know what happened, son, but God has healed me. And he said, not only that, you know those peptic ulcers that kept me from eating anything? He said, yeah. And he said, they said, all I got's a few scars left. It's all gone. My daddy starts coming to church, and this is my daddy now. And one Sunday morning, he is slain in the spirit. Church is over with. People are going home. My daddy's still laying in the floor. I had to pick my daddy up and carry him to the car so Mama could drive him home. That's what restoration can do. He gave me back the years. The years of being an outcast, of being desolate and alone. My mama and my daddy. My mama she gave me and my older brother dual power of attorney in her latter years. Why? She says, let him take care of the money. You take care of me. I have had that opportunity restored to me. So don't imagine where you are right now. It's where you have to stay because the meal of restoration will be served in this house. People who are so weary, so tired, don't know which way to go, don't know who to look to. They're going to walk through those doors. I've told you this before, but here a few months ago, one of the times we ministered here, Libby and I are standing right here, and there's only the keyboard and where'd she go? There. Yeah, Amber's up here, and they're singing. And I'm thinking, well, where's everybody at? There ain't no drum, there ain't no guitars, ain't nothing, just them two. And they came walking through the door that was there, I think. And it was like a wave come sweeping through there with them. I looked at Libby and I said, hold on. There's something stirring in this local house. I'm not here trying to pump you up. I'm telling you, when you hunger and thirst for God, I know this morning seems odd to some. They're looking, what are they going to do now? All these people getting the microphone. Shut them off. Turn them down. Let them go. You say, hey, you didn't hear me say that. Yeah, I did. Not here, but here. Listen, are you ready for that kind of restoration? Because people have been sorely misused and abused because they tried to be released before they were ever restored. You've got to be restored, and this can be such a house. The familiar attitude that that's being created here where you're linked together. Yeah, I know. I'm part of a church that's 27,000 members. I just spent 3 days with my pastor, Ron Carpenter Jr., and Bishop Tony Miller with a group of about 30 guys and their wives, just talking about the things of the kingdom, some of the best teaching and impartation I've ever been a part of. But these guys are hungering and thirsting. I know there's a remnant out there that, like you, want something more than just Sunday morning as usual. Are you willing to be a place where they can come and eat a meal of restoration? Those who are tired, those who are hurting,